Okay, we are live. We're going to give viewers a few minutes to join us, and then we'll get started with our candid conversations with the City of South Fulton City Council candidates. Give them a few minutes. Okay. And if time does permit, for those of you that would like to ask Councilwoman Dr. Dr. Catherine Rao. That's loaded. Councilwoman Dr. Catherine Rao. I know I don't have to say it like that, but I just have to give you your respect. Um, but if you should have questions, you can post those in the chat, but you do have to do it through StreamYard. So you cannot do it on any other platform or we won't see it. So hopefully, for those of you that do have questions, we'll be able to see those as time permits. Well, it looks like we are at 7:31, so we'll go ahead and get started. I am Daphne Jordan, the founder of Safer Communities in South Fulton. For those of you that are unaware, this group has been around since 2015-16. It's an advocacy group that advocates for safer communities in South Fulton. And this group is encompassed of state representatives, federal law enforcement officers, as well as local council members and some mayors. And so over time, we have used the group to advocate for certain policies and issues that were pertaining to safety. Tonight, I have the pleasure of having a candid conversation with Councilwoman Catherine Wow in District 1 in the city of South Fulton. Other candidates were invited. I did not hear from them. So we're having a true candid conversation with Councilwoman Catherine Rao. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and read her bio for those of you that need to refamiliarize yourself with her. Dr. Catherine Foster Rowell is the councilwoman for District 1 of the city of South Fulton and served as the city's first mayor pro tem. Since taking office 6 years ago, she has authored and passed over 75 pieces of legislation and earned 3 Georgia Municipal Association professional development certificates. And they are Certificate of Recognition, Certificate of Achievement, and Certificate of Excellence, and completed the prestigious Robert Knox Leadership Program and the Georgia Academy of Economic Development. Dr. Rao possesses over 15 years of nonprofit sector experience, having served as Executive Director of Operation Peace, Senior Government Grants Manager for Families First, and Senior Program Director with Enterprise Community Partners. Additionally, she has held leadership roles in several public sector consulting firms, to include Beacon Analytics, the Bronner Group, and Maximus Consulting Firm. In addition, she has worked for Fulton County Schools as a parent liaison. Dr. Rowell is published and has served on numerous volunteer boards, which include but are not limited to the National Forum for Black Public Administrators as a national board member and local chapter president, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Metropolitan Atlanta chapter board member, National Church Residences Southeast Advisory Board, and Cascade Business Merchants Association Advisory Board member. She currently serves on the board of directors of the Conference of Minority Public Administrator and the American Society of Public Administrators Georgia chapter. Dr. Rao holds bachelor's degrees in social work and sociology, a Master of Public Administration in Urban Management, and a doctorate in political science from Clark Atlanta University. Since serving on city council, her focus has been on financial transparency, sponsoring the open checkbook legislation and the transparency in contracting ordinance. It calls for the staff to establish and maintain a list of open and forecasted procurement opportunities, publish contract awards and pricing, maintain a contractor sanction list, implement financial and conflict of interest disclosures for elected officials, and provide certain information on the city's website. She has also authored a number of environmental pieces of legislation to regulate transfer stations. Increased recent legislative initiatives have focused on flood management planning and insurance, advocating for climate resiliency planning for our city, and most recently, the National League of Cities service line program to allow residents to insure their main water and sewer lines for normal cost, which will roll on in the next 90 days. Since serving on City Council, Dr. Rowell has been the recipient of several community and service awards, to include the Pinnacle Leadership Award from the Fortitude Education and Cultural Development Center Incorporated, and Fulton County District 6 Environmental Award, and the American Society for Public Administration Georgia Chapter Distinguished Practitioner Award in 2019. Woo, Dr. Rao, that's loaded. Wow. Well, we're just going to jump right in. And I'm sure you can imagine my first question. And that is going to be, why are you running again for your seat in District 1? And of course, we just read through some of your qualifications, but specify what you see the top issues are that you would like to address.
Thank you for the question. I'm very excited to re-seek my seat because I've started a number of initiatives that I want to see to completion. When I first ran, one of the first things I heard from constituents was that they wanted to see quality economic development in our area. And I went to work on that pretty much immediately. Another area that we heard a lot about is food and industrial. Of course, when I first came in, that was not a part of my district or the city. But now it's been with us for a couple of years, and we've made some significant strides in terms of turning that around. Special thanks to our police department. They do an excellent job and trying to make sure we kind of get a handle on things that have historically occurred. We don't have to go into that. I think anybody who's been around knows some of the challenges we faced on food and industrial. But the cleanup has been significant. And I want to kind of continue that work, and that happens only through partnerships. So thanks to the work of the Food and Industrial CID, as well as the Development Authority of Fulton County, it's only greater in the future as we move towards the redevelopment of the area.
Awesome. And as it relates to policy, because as you know, council members, one of the main focus areas for you are creating policies and also approving the budget. Of course, you have a plethora of other responsibilities, but those are the main responsibilities. And I think from the work that's been done over the years, it's important for constituents to understand how that work gets done is through policies. What policies out of the 75 pieces of legislation that you have passed, that's impressive, which policies have you passed that are applicable to safety that may have had an impact within the area or the district, and or which ones are you working on in the future?
Specifically around this, and it's indirectly, we focused on, and I focused on, as we began our budget process early on, public safety had always been a priority. I think when you think back when we first started the city, the number one complaint we had, lack of visibility of police, and our crime rates were really high, hence the creation of safer communities. As you mentioned, we had a lot of slighter crimes, a lot of things that were going on in our community. And so one of the things that the inaugural city council did was really kind of focus on that. And it started, of course, with our beat study we did with Georgia Tech. Once Chief Meadows got on board, trying to better understand our crime patterns and all that. And our focus has been on data-driven policing. Right, letting the data inform how they patrol, how they set up programming. And one of the additional things we saw that was critically important is that we have or change our interface with our young people. So immediately we put money in the budget to one, increase our police department staffing, as well as to roll out a park rangers program, which has been in effect for a couple of years, which our plan was to make sure that as young people interacted with law enforcement, that would be a positive experience. And so our park rangers program was targeted towards, changing the face of what you traditionally think about with policing. And I think that's been very helpful. I hear and get positive feedback from the community in terms of the visibility in the parks. We hope to continue to grow that. But those were some of the things initially, taking the recommendations for staff, in our case, Chief Meadows, in terms of how we needed to kind of grow and expand our police department, and supporting that. And I think you probably heard it time after time that the council has been, supportive of the initiatives, and that's been across the board. Even with changes in our city council, there's always been a commitment to support our public safety personnel. So I would say that was one. In terms of our fire department, same thing. When I think about public safety, we talk a lot about the lack of hospitals in our community. So our first responders are critically important. Our fire department was, the front line when we were at the height of the pandemic. In fact, I think we were some of the first cases that kind of went public with our fire personnel contracting COVID-19. And it was because they were on the front line. And in our communities, again, people may have been sheltering in place for a while. And then by the time they caught on the fire, some of those residents or constituents really needed some service. And so it was our fire personnel who were on the front line and police, serving our community. So putting the resources there. When we first came out with COVID, we did a lot of things to our facilities to try to address that, whether it was installing plexiglass or some of those things, the barriers to try to keep people safe in a time when we didn't know everything we needed to know about how the disease was being transmitted. But through it all, we saw, all things considered, the effect wasn't as devastating on our community. Although we did lose residents, I think we tried to do a really good job by one. I think we were one of the first cities, and some of it came with criticism, but we wanted to protect our residents about, sheltering in place and, all of that. We kind of kept our mask mandates and some of those things that, in hindsight, I'm glad that we took those steps. I think it saved a lot of lives.
Absolutely. And sheltering in place was, I think, one of the most difficult things for all of us, especially with those of us with the little small children. But I do recall the city being very responsive relatively quickly during that time. And speaking of budgets, one of the key responsibilities of City Council is reviewing and approving the annual budget. How would you prioritize spending to address the needs of our community?
Well, one of the things I think is really important is, and it's been said, we inherited a lot when we took over our facilities from the county. That continues to be an area that the city is trying to work through, bringing our facilities up to par. This year's budget reflects continued investment in that area. So it's an extension of what we initially did with the Urban Redevelopment Agency that was created to try to fund some of our most basic needs as it relates to facility improvements. And one of the things we knew, even with that $17 million investment, that I think the original figure was about 50 or 60 million. So it was really a drop in the bucket for what we needed to do. And so we focused on some of the most basic things in terms of updating our generators. I mean, we didn't talk about it much, but the reality is many of the, we couldn't get parts for our old generators. We literally had to replace them. And if you think about it, that's where our first responders, or if we had an emergency situation, if a resident had to go there, they would be going to a fire station. And
Right.
they were, again, we still need to do some major investment, but some of the base things needed to happen. So we focused on updating those kitchens and generators and some of the base things, because for all intensive purposes, when our firefighters are there, they're basically living there. So
Yeah.
making those facilities as, livable as possible and can enhance it. It was also consistent with our studies as we looked at, where our growth is in our city. We know we need more fire stations. We know that we have to address a number of things in our fire service to get our ISO rating down. For those who don't know, that kind of dictates your insurance premiums. We want to get as close to one as possible. And so that's going to require us to make a number of steps to get there. And our facilities is one area that we got to focus on. So budgetarily, that's key. As well as this year, we are going to begin to roll out our construction program for key facilities. One would be a police headquarters and a courthouse, as well as a fire headquarters and a joint training facility. So I think those are all key things that we're looking forward to begin construction on. The city has invested and purchased land to be able to do that. So now we are at the point where we can all get excited because now we can get to brick and mortar. So I think those are all significant milestones that we kind of have slated for 2024. And we're just looking forward to, rolling those initiatives out.
Absolutely. Because the city, I say you all, but the city inherited a lot of old fire trucks and fire houses, I guess, for the lack of fire buildings. So it does take a lot to go into those fire departments and really bring them up to standards. And so I'm glad to hear that that's been a focal point and area to make sure that they have the best in class and equipment so they can do their jobs, as well as for the citizens to be able to be well taken care of. And so my next question is centered around engaging neighborhood associations, because as it relates to crime, and we were experiencing a lot of the slider crimes, what I learned is our community is heavy with HOAs. That can be good and that can just, be the latter. So how would you, or have you been engaged with neighborhood associations and community groups to foster collaboration and address issues within your district and or the city?
Absolutely. From day one, I pretty much started engaging with the HOAs. It was important as a new city that we kind of reached out to various community groups to let them know more about the city, help them understand how we wanted to partner. And so I regularly attend HOA meetings, whether it's Sandtown Center, Barrington Trace, Merriam Woods, Cascade Knolls. I've been to most of the HOAs in the district. And one of the key things is a great way to hear directly from citizens about the issues that are most pressing to them. So I found them to be a great opportunity to have conversation and to really just listen. In addition, I attend the Sandtown Community Association meeting each month. A lot of times I'm there more so to listen. One of the things I encourage anybody who wants to do development in the district, on the Sandtown side in particular, you need to pretty much come to Sandtown. I really want to hear what questions residents are asking, what issues are of concern to them. One of the great things about the Sandtown Community Association, they record all their meetings. So you can literally go back. It began during the pandemic and they continue because they had greater participation than when we were having in-person pre-pandemic. So sometimes that was one of the benefits of the pandemic. We learned better ways to communicate and engage with community. And we found these virtual platforms really work. So found them to be very valuable in terms of getting to residents. In addition to the HOAs, I'm very involved with the Food and Industrial CID. We had a freight cluster advisory group that met and came up with a freight study that you can read more about on the CID's website. but it's a plan to kind of transform food and industrial as we know it, looking at everything from straight smart technology to improve signalization along the corridor. We want to add improved lighting, sidewalks. If you've been in the area for any time, you've heard at some point or another that you may have learned about somebody who tragically lost their life just from trying to cross over cross food and industrial. And so those are things that we are committed to addressing. And, that requires planning because these projects literally take millions of dollars. I was just out on site at a project or with staff looking at Riverside Drive and Union Road. To give you an idea, a mile of sidewalks costs about $1.5 million.
Huh.
That's no small change. And so when people just say, oh, we want sidewalks, it doesn't quite work that we adopt a budget for a 12-month period. We pretty much stick to that budget. Sometimes, we do mid-year adjustments, but that's usually if we're getting in revenue that was not anticipated, like a grant comes in or something like that. And we do budget for some grant receivables, but that's usually towards the end of the year. So it's really important for citizens to learn how to engage and advocate in the budget process, because once we set that budget, the ability to shift is, limited to none. We're trying to execute those projects that have been recommended by the city manager and the staff, because they present the budget based on what they've heard over the last years, the condition of, facilities, bridges, roads, and then they work to try to address those issues over that budget cycle, which is 12 months. So our budget goes from October 1st to September 30th. At our next council meeting, we'll be voting on our budget.
And you brought up a good point, because I've heard, from some of out in I would just say in the rumblings, some people seem to think that should they be elected in this council, they're going to be able to make these changes and they're going to be able to make them right away. And you made a very good point that the budget, once approved, it does not change, and neither do those projects until 2024. And then the council members, as you are going back into office, then you're working on making changes for the upcoming year towards that year for that particular budget. So to me, it is important for citizens to understand, so that you are not listening to broken promises that just will not happen. Once this budget is voted on, I just want to kind of reiterate that it is defined by the projects that are already approved by the current council and or city manager. So any, person that's promising this and that, it just won't happen. The budget will be approved at the next meeting. And so it's very important, like you said, for citizens not only to be aware of how budgets work, but to also understand what's real and what's not. And so this goes into my next question, and this one is about cultural diversity. Because believe it or not, and you and I are very aware of how diverse our entire city is, but some areas are more diverse than others. As it relates to cultural diversity, though, how have you promoted inclusion, as well as programs and or projects centered around cultural diversity?
Well, I would say that, in general, the council a couple years back adopted a inclusion resolution to welcome everybody to our city. I think that's very, very important. We all have diverse constituencies. I can tell you mine is growing more diverse. And so, this is just basic. You respect people, you respect diversity, you respect different cultures, beliefs, religion. And so we don't want to do anything that would offend or alienate anyone. So I think it was really important that we as a body adopted that resolution to show that we welcomed anybody in our city. Okay, so that's one. But it's how I interact. I really don't know any other way. We have businesses that are diverse. we have residents that are diverse. So I think that's why at one point you saw some concern when our only message was, Black on purpose, when that was not, um, reflective of our inclusive of all of our community. And so, while I think there's great pride in our community that we do have a large African American population, it is not our only population.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I like that question is because, the more a city becomes diverse, it is a city that should be one that embraces, that diversity. We're right by the airport. I know that's one reason why we have yet to move. It only takes me 5 minutes to get to the airport when I have to jet set to jump on a plane. But diversity also goes into my next question, which is about economic development. Let's speak to some of the projects, and I'll caution with this because I want to be very careful when we talk about it as well. But how have you worked or managed economic development in your district? And do you have plans to bring more development in the near future?
One of the things I did early on, and you mentioned it in my bio, I actually got an economic development certification because I wanted to make sure I was speaking the language and understanding what developers look for when they're coming to an area. I think that was really important because a lot of times residents say, "Oh, I want X, Y, and Z," and we're not speaking the language that they understand. Whether it's traffic counts or whether they're looking at density, which is the key part of to attracting development. It was really important for me to understand it. So first, I wanted to make sure I was well educated on, what developers are looking for, site selectors, that kind of thing. The second thing I did is I focused on doing economic development tours. I did that beginning the first year I was in office. Worked with our local real estate agency. At that time, it was the only one in the city, Better Homes and Gardens on Cascade, Metro Brokers, and, kind of partnered to say, hey, how can we highlight our city, highlight vacant land at that time, and also distressed commercial property. And so on those initial tours, we might find 10 or 15 properties, just kind of put it out there like on Eventbrite and see who showed up. I can tell you as a result of that, we were able to take some distressed properties on Cascade, and if they're not developed, there's now a plan for them. Just to give you an example, where Dough in a Box, I remember on my first economic development tour, you probably remember that building. It's right there between Cascade and just call it Camp Creek. That building sat vacant for years. It was an after school and a medical building. Now it's Dough in a Box. And, they're doing really well. And they close, 2, 3 o'clock. So, but I remember at that time when that building was on sale, it was a commercial property. I want to say it cost maybe $250,000. Yes. And so, again, sometimes we miss the jewels before they turn into what they are, not to the gold. But kind of focused on that. I focused on some cleaners in a warehouse that was on U2 Drive that's been since purchased and will be redeveloped. Just looked at what, on Cascade, it was already a great commercial corridor. Just need a little lipstick, if you will. And at that time, like one of our Wendy's, it needed a facelift when we saw other Wendy's being updated. Now it's updated. They did some great landscaping. So really trying to work with what we already had and just enhance. And one of the key things we do is work on making sure we keep that corridor clean. When people are traveling and you're trying to attract something new and great and you're selling a community, the community really needs to be clean. It needs to be attractive. So I've been partnering with the Cascade Business Merchants Association since really I started being involved with that before I even was elected with the monthly cleanups. But it makes a huge difference. Usually now you don't see the trash like you used to see. You might see some shopping carts, but compared to where we were, we've made significant strides. And so one of the things that is currently in the works, we have a proposal coming well, I won't put that out yet. We'll wait. but we had
There's
the
some
storage
people me
place.
too.
We had the storage facility. And I remember when the developer came and said they want to do it, I said, I don't know what the community will feel about it, but I gave them a list, and it had about 25 residents who lived along the Cascade corridor who I know were very vocal. The Lamont Cars, the Vanjie Walker, those people who have been vested in this community, the Doug Grays, all of those people who have been fighting for quality development on a Cascade corridor. I said, if you can get approval from these people, then come back to me and talk to me. And what he did, the developer, he took about a month or two and did a whole lot of one-on-ones to talk about the vision and kind of get their input. And it doesn't even really look like a storage facility, but it's really nice. It's at Kimberly and Cascade. And so again, hearing from those people in this community who've been fighting the fight is really important to me in terms of getting them the way in. Same thing. I've worked with Cascade Hills on projects, to try to hear their concerns about properties adjacent to them. Now, you don't always get everybody on board. It's hard sometimes, but the reality is balancing property owner rights with community interests can be a bit of a balancing act. And so what you try to do is, at least I've tried to do, is try to find the common ground, if I can, so that, if you can create a win-win situation, you try to do that. If you can do that, you can avoid a lot of headaches for the city, possible litigation, the whole like. So I think it's real important to be an active listener, try to get the developers to be in when they can, and community to consider, another perspective and the cost that goes in these developments, because it's expensive. Well, so those are some of the things. I've enjoyed a long working relationship now with the Georgia Home Builders Association. We have done a tour for the last, I guess we've done about 3 or 4. I can't remember now because we paused, of course, during the pandemic. And that was just to kind of tell everybody our city is great. You get a lot on the news and it's not necessarily reflective of what's here, right? You hear the negative things on the TV. And one of the things that I constantly hear during those tours is like, the area is absolutely beautiful, but they don't know if they didn't come to see it. So those were some of the things that I've kind of worked on. And then for District 1 in particular, like I said, Cascade was kind of already there, just needed a little lipstick, if you will. Sandtown Crossing was a little bit different. We had some commercial activity at the node, but thanks to the wisdom of Mr. Perlman, we were able to gather some information about the building permits that were coming through the city, even though the houses weren't there yet, to talk about all the growth that was coming to the area. And he used that data that the city was able to provide to help get our second Publix location at Sandtown Crossing. So I think it's those kind of creative ways to figure out while we may not check all the boxes, because most corporate brands, corporate stores have criteria that they look for to come in a community. If you don't check the boxes, they're not coming. It's really kind of that simple. And so I think it's that in relationships. Of course, the other Publix on Cascade, they had success with that. So it made it an easier sell, the success of Camp Creek. So seeing all the new building permits helped tell that story. And once you get Publix, believe it or not, it's certain brands that just want to be by Publix because they have the demographics that they also want to attract, the disposable income that allows people to come in their store and their businesses to be successful. So it's really important to kind of understand that mix and understand that density is a key part. It's not a bad word. We have to control it and be thoughtful about it and limit where we put it. But you have to have it if you want restaurants and you want retail. There is nowhere that you'll go where you'll see quality retail that you don't see density. If you look at the marketplace, what's behind it? A whole lot of condominiums, apartments, single family houses. That is the formula to
Mhm.
attract that growth to your area. If you go down Roswell Road, what do you see? Density everywhere. So, when people say, oh, why are we bringing multifamily or this? Then what you're asking us to do is not be able to deliver. Because if we don't balance it, we're not trying to put loads and loads of apartment. We're trying to just do enough with the mix of the housing we already have to attract, the restaurants. Because we didn't have data. Now I
Right.
think our public stores is like number 4 in the metro area, and we are like not even 3 years old.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. And that's my favorite Publix, by the way. I love that Publix.
I
Um,
love it too.
it's clean, it's well stocked, and it was exactly what was needed. So
And it
kudos
was
to
their new prototype. Yeah, I mean, if you
mm,
notice, it's a little bit different.
it is.
They have a large prepared food section. You can grab, go, heat up at home.
Mhm.
That was trying to respond to a lot of the things that people were asking for.
Yep.
And again, what does the grocery store of the future look like? People live busy lives. A lot of times they come home, they don't have time to do all that. They need to grab something, heat it up, and prepare, a healthy meal for their family. So they included that, and everybody loves, of course, the loft upstairs. You can have a quick meeting or grab some food or lunch and enjoy that upstairs in Publix. One of my favorite features. I've
I
met
didn't
there
know that.
often. Oh, you didn't know
Oh, I
about the
did not
loft?
know
It's
that.
great.
No.
Yeah.
So do you have to reserve it, or if it's available, you could just
Yeah,
have a
you can
meeting?
just go up there and eat, or
Oh,
have a meeting. I can tell you'll see people up there working on their laptops, and
really?
we've had coffee with a cop up there before,
Oh,
and HOAs have met there. It's not, it's quiet because it's, a
it's
open
above.
space, but depending during the day, it's a lot quieter in the
Right.
grocery store. But again, great resources to grab lunch downstairs, have somebody just meet you at
Gonna
Publix
say.
and have lunch.
You can grab a platter of those chicken tenders and have you a quick little meeting up there. I
Mhm.
did not know that. That's good to know. And then the new Starbucks, that's still within the corridor or of District 1 too.
Yes.
So
No,
that
that's all District 1. So
oh, it's all
the
District 1?
yes.
The new
Yes.
Starbucks?
Yes, all of that whole side all the way to the Douglas County line is District 1.
When I tell you I can't wait for that Starbucks to open. Do you have the
It
deets
is
on that?
beautiful. You see how big it is?
Yes, the patio. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go to the patio. Do you know the time frame when they're thinking about opening?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. We're only probably about 3 weeks away.
Okay,
And,
so I'll wait to hear
and,
about the
and Chipotle is, around Thanksgiving. The
okay, good.
completion targeted completion date. So really excited about that, and hoping to announce soon some other little additions to Sandtown Center. For those who don't know, you also have Freddy's Steak Burger and Custard coming as well
Mm,
on the opposite side of Popeyes.
okay. And who
Again,
was
I'm sure
Freddy?
that'll be a favorite for our Westlake students. The
Okay,
closest one is Fayetteville. They don't have another one on the south side,
they
period.
don't. Okay. Okay. Well, I can't wait to try them. I'm still on stuck on Starbucks because the options were getting kind of slim and the lines were getting long. So I know for a fact that's going to be huge for the community, and I can't wait to go there and get my hope. Yeah, I can still get my pumpkin spice, my pumpkin spice tall. So I'm looking forward to that. The next segue is sort of what you're talking about, getting businesses to come. And I think, just listening to some of the comments, it's why can't we get this, person to come? And how did this, pop up in the area? And that has a lot to do with zoning.
Mhm.
Um, can you go into just a little detail about how you just can't change the zone? So if something is zoned for, I don't know, apartments and or I don't even know what the zoning for that would be. You cannot, tell a business owner I'm going to just change the zoning so that you cannot build in this area.
Right.
That's a huge issue in our community where they're very perplexed, misguided about that. So can you give just a little insight as to how that's managed legally
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
city
I
council?
will. So one of the things we often talk about, this might be a little controversial, but I'm going to say it. We keep talking about updating the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan. If you read the comprehensive plan, there is nothing in there that you could object to, literally. It's just a description of
Mm,
facts. If you go back and read it, it's aspirational. It's not anything that I think needs tweaking. But the key thing you need to pay attention to is the future land use map. Out of
mm,
all our discussions, like this is the Cliff Note version. When you look at that map, it will tell you if somebody seeks rezoning of a property, what you would allow, what the city's decision would be
mm,
relative to that parcel. It's already spelled out.
mm,
So if you look at that, you look at the staff recommendation, it would
mm,
be consistent with that map. So I can tell you from District 1, we have the lowest density that's above agriculture. So most of the area on the future land use calls for our area to be suburban 1. That means that no more than 3 housing units on an acre. I give that example because if the map is coded to be suburban 1, which is the lowest residential value, if a person comes forward and says, hey, I want to apply to rezone my agricultural property, and they say they currently have 1 acre, they say, but now I want to put 3 houses on there. Based on what I tell you, what should be the answer?
you can't do that.
No, you can do it
Oh,
because
you
it's
can.
it's
It's three.
suburban
It's three
1,
houses.
3
Mhm.
houses per acre. So our answer should be yes.
Okay.
So I say that because residents, whatever update we do, really pay attention to the map, because some of the things that communities come back and ask us to say to no to legally, we don't have a legal basis to say no until you change that map.
Mm,
So again, you want to look at the shading on the map, make sure that you're the area or your district, that you don't have things that you don't want.
mhm.
Um, but a perfect example, say, we are doing a update. We can't arbitrarily say, oh, we don't want, food and industrial anymore. It's all industrial. It was here before the residential. So we couldn't
Right.
like change that all of a sudden to like, a residential area,
Residential.
because it's
Mhm,
industrial and it has been that. And
mhm.
so that's the example, just like we can't just plop anything down in a residential area. One of the things that I think the community needs to understand, back in 2019 and 2020, we developed an economic development plan that was adopted by the city council. Okay.
Mhm.
And that plan basically said we were going to have 9 economic development nodes that would have live, work, and play.
Mhm.
Um,
I remember that.
Governments love plans. We just implement the plans because it'll take you years to complete the average economic development project. And I'm talking 3 to 8 years. Many of the projects that came out of the ground that you see now, we were working on those before the pandemic. The pandemic just brought it to a halt, right?
Mhm.
So that's just to give you idea. I know one of the projects on Cascade, we've been working trying to, not only does it have to go through our zoning, then they have to connect with City of Atlanta watershed to connect water. It's so many moving pieces to a development project, and they
Mhm.
don't happen quickly. And so we spend a lot of time trying to make sure, projects don't get delayed. We kind of keep them on track. It could be issues like they wanted, a variance from the sign, especially corporate brands, because you can't write a code that's going to, cover every possible development situation, which is
Right.
why you can apply for a variance. And then we have various boards, not the council, where we appoint people to serve on these boards to consider it. Just like economic development incentives, those aren't decided on by the city council. We have a separate board our development authority looks at projects to figure out if they should be given incentives. That's not covered by the council. And so that's why it's really important that we make good appointments on these boards. There are residents, which is the great part, because they should be as invested as we are about making sure we bring quality projects to the city. And if we are given an incentive that, it's for the greater good of the community. So, we have many boards in our city, and we have a lot of residents that we owe a debt of gratitude because they volunteer their time to serve on those boards, and they're intensive. They spend a lot of time meeting as well.
Right. Right. And they also have meetings that we can attend. I think most of them are virtual. I don't know if any are meeting in person, but citizens can find out all about those boards on the city's website. And I'm glad you kind of walked us through that example, because although we may want what we want, the zoning, like you said, if it's already mastered or it's already in the plans, you can't tell someone that they can't do it just because you don't want it.
Which is why in those cases you try to work with the community to help them understand. They don't always understand it. They don't always understand. But I think it's important to understand that, and more importantly, participate in the process when we're updating these documents. Because once they're set, they're technically supposed to guide the work for the next 20 years. So right. It's important to engage in the conversation, because again, you're putting the you can put the city in a situation that's not ideal, because you're asking us to do something that really we don't have a legal basis to do it.
Right. And I'm also glad that you mentioned that Fulton Industrial is an industrial area. The tax dollars that are coming out of that area, it would be crazy to turn that into residential. We would lose, millions if that was the case. So we acquired that. So that's not something that's brand new. The city acquired that with good reasoning, of course. But then the only other industrial area is near Roosevelt Highway. So we
also have Oakley Industrial. So Oakley we also Industrial. Have them on the furthest end, which is in District 7.
That is, I often pass by. It's weird. I pass by that area on my way to Fayetteville. That's right, how far, exactly. That's how far widespread the city of South Fulton is. I don't think people really realize that, and it just came.
It's huge. The city is only, I think, about 20 square miles smaller than the city of Atlanta. We are vast. It's huge. And what you said about Fulton Industrial is key. It is an asset that we should all be excited to have. It's the largest industrial area east of the Mississippi River. Bringing it into our city helped with that rebalancing, because people are also talking about, we're running this city on the backs of residential property. That's not the case. And if you look at it, let me tell you how I know that's not true. It was in the last 2 years that we started having a surplus in the city's budget. We owe a lot of that to the revenue that came in with Fulton Industrial. So just like we have to take care of our residential, we have to make sure we're taking care of our commercial corridor and our industrial. A healthy city is going to have all that entire mix.
Absolutely. And I remember when there was a huge advocacy around making sure that we acquired Fulton Industrial when the city was being formed. So definitely we must educate ourselves on the who, what, when, where, why, and how, especially when it comes to, as you mentioned earlier, being fiscally responsible. There was a lot said in the past about the city not having money. Well, the city has a surplus and so that's actually good, but also it means that we have money to do the things that we really need to do to help the city to become the city that we want it to become. Within reason, though. Rome wasn't built in a day.
That's so right.
I think people forget that we have been and we are coming out of a pandemic. We've been building a pool. It has taken almost 2 years now, because once you come out of the pandemic, the resources were very low, and we had to wait.
They still are.
And they still are. So yeah, I get it. I understand it. If you're not building and haven't built anything in the past, 2 to 3 years, you haven't felt that crunch. But we're not the only ones trying to build.
Well,
So
let me give you a perfect example. When we were, when we started off even on that bridge in Cascade, we didn't know that we were gonna still start dealing with issues with supply. Like we didn't really know the effect of the pandemic on every aspect of our lives.
mhm,
We saw it there. I can tell you, we saw it at the Southwest Art Center. We had been waiting for a chiller. We had to order. It took
mm,
a year to get it. We had to order. It took a year to get it. So those are some of the challenges in the post pandemic era in terms of some of these projects, and some of them it would have been just almost easier to start from scratch. You know what I mean? But
mhm,
again, you're buying systems for existing buildings and all that, and they have its own nuances with that. But we're going to continue to move forward. We got to build some new. We got to fix up some old. That's just where we are, and it won't happen overnight. But I think we are moving in the right direction. I'm very excited about our city manager, um, Ms.
yes,
Subadan, and her plan in terms of us making sure we set aside money and we begin the capital projects to bring these buildings online. And I think her strategy is well thought out because our two biggest departments, the majority of our city employees are in fire and police,
mm.
literally. And so if we can take care of those two larger divisions and make sure that those employees are taken care of, the footprint of what will ultimately be your city hall will be significantly less, right? Because
Mhm,
you're putting people where they need to be. We're a large
yes,
city. People talk about, oh, they'll look at town centers where everything is there. Well, that wouldn't even make sense for a city of our size. We're 100, I think they're saying around 111,000 residents, and we're very spread out. We need different facilities spread out through the city. Even though
absolutely.
we'll have that town center, we'll have some government presence in it. All of our
Mhm,
employees wouldn't have been there anyway. So I just want to kind of respond to that because people talk about that. I was like, they give examples of cities where look up the city. The city might be 10 square miles. We're 100 over 100 square miles. So it's a different model for us. But the key thing is we're going to begin that building, and I'm extremely excited about that.
I'm excited too. I'm just excited about all to come because I've been here since 2010 when we were unincorporated. So I've seen it from the beginning. I've seen it from when we had shucks, we didn't hardly have any police in unincorporated, and
Yes.
response times were extremely, extremely low.
Mhm.
So I've seen it evolve into what it is, and I am looking forward to exactly what you described. Which brings us to a breaking point where we can entertain a few questions, if you
Okay.
don't mind.
Yes.
I I see one question here, and I'm just going to read it. It says, if an investor wanted to, could any family entertainment be added to Fulton Industrial?
Possibly. I think one of the things I did, I introduced the ordinance to provide incentives for family entertainment.
Mm,
One of the things that will happen under the Development Authority of Fulton County, they will issue a RFP to look at proposals for master developers to improve the I-20 exchange at Fulton Industrial. What I can tell you, and I know this city won't look the same in 5 years. It just won't, just from the projects we currently have underway. And
mhm.
I think we've been good stewards in terms of ushering projects that have a balance to kind of uh, bring some new commercial in our area, but not overdo it. Because we also we love our trees, we love the green space, we love the large lot sizes. I mean, we do appreciate that collectively as a body, as a city council. So I'm just looking forward to the next chapter.
Absolutely. Let me see if I see any other questions. If you have a question for Dr. Catherine Rowell, please place it in the chat. I did see one earlier. I'm just going to see if I can find it really quickly. Um, It's important to have someone who digs deep and studies to be well versed in the laws of governing cities. I would agree with that comment. But do you all have any questions? I'll give you all about another 2 minutes, and then I'll ask Dr. Rao to give us some final um, important information about any events you have coming up or meetings that we should all attend, as well as some final points you would like to make about the upcoming election. Oh, here we are. How are we going to decrease code violations in our city, especially the horse farm on Butner Road? Now, I don't, is that in your district? No.
No, but it's in the city, so
Okay.
I'll take it. I think
Okay.
the reality is, um, you know, from what I understand, that particular property may be in court. I don't want to totally speak on it. It's not my area.
Hmm.
Um, but I see the concern. I've seen some of the posts on social media. Again, we all have a role to play. We have lanes that we're supposed to be in. And the council's role is not to be in code enforcement. We have a board to deal with that. And if the code board can't address it, then it needs to go to court, whether that's municipal court or superior court. I think what I've recently heard is that maybe that one is superior court. And that's probably why it's taking so long, because of the backlog. I don't know that they've gotten through everything from the pandemic. So I think that might be the case with that. But in any event, staying in our lane is important. I'm gonna stay out of that one because again, we have a board that's able and capable of addressing those issues. We have some very committed staff in code enforcement. Many of them, several of them live in our city. Is there room for improvement? Always, in any department. So we just continue to press forward.
And I think the key thing that you just described, I think oftentimes some people think that you all can do everything and that you're responsible for everything. But I think the biggest part of the answer that you just gave is code enforcement. The code enforcement board is actually the ones that are hearing, measuring these issues, dealing with these issues, and they have meetings every month, if I'm not mistaken. Citizens that are concerned about that, you all need to get very engaged, get on the website, find out when those meetings are, attend those meetings, and ask the board what they are doing to help address your concerns.
Correct.
So that was a very, very good point. I even forget myself.
And let me also share because
Mhm.
I also hear a lot of misinformation about, like I just recently heard somebody put out, and I know this is probably the election season rhetoric. Oh,
Mhm.
there's 600 apartments coming to Wallace Road. Absolutely not true. But you can go on our city website and it will tell you every zoning case that we've dealt with since the inception of the city. Every case is up there.
All right.
In addition, the code cases, you can go on the city's website and look at the code cases
Mhm.
that the code enforcement board is dealing with. So much information is really, if you take the time to study, is right there. You can find out. Our staff are, send them an email. If you say, hey, I can't tell what happened with this based on the website, shoot them an email.
Right.
They'll respond and they'll answer your question. I know a lot of people have complained about this phone service. We're going to figure that out and we're going to get that right. Thank goodness
Yes.
the city manager has put money in to update the technology. We're going to make sure we get some people in these departments. Every department needs to have somebody who's answering the phone and can direct people in the right thing. That was one of the number one things I asked her about,
Mhm.
improving our customer service. And that means talking to a live person and getting an answer. We
Yes.
take a lot of calls as city council. Some I'm like, I shouldn't even have this call, but I'll take them.
Absolutely.
I'll take them.
Yes.
So customer service is a priority. I think we're going to figure it out. We've put money to it in this year's budget to address some of those issues. And
Good.
I hope on the public safety side, we look at some alternative options for our 911, because I think that has a lot to do with our delayed response times.
It
Uh,
does.
and cities up north, again, I do a lot of research, have looked at a different model, and we might need to entertain some things differently going forward to make sure that we're responding to our residents in a timely manner, whether it's fire or police, because we have some great employees that are very committed.
That's good. Very well put, Councilwoman. You have another question here that says, what do you need from your constituents to help you be successful for the next 4 years?
Well, you're brand ambassador, so we need to speak positivity in our city. I see a lot of, I'm gonna call it unhealthy community engagement in our city.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help when we're trying to sell our city from an economic development standpoint. Um, it doesn't help. So I think brand ambassadors, we have so much expertise in this city. I can tell you, if if you're in that development space, if you own a franchise in another city, bring it to our city. Um, I know, with Starbucks, the person who played a key role in our Starbucks lived right here in District 1. I tap the resources that are at my fingertips. I'm excited that at Sandtown Crossing, that many of those businesses um, are owned and operated by people who live in this city. If you look at the wax studio, you look at Gaucher's, you have Allstate. Um, all of those businesses are Sandtown Pub, the Subway. These people live in our city. So when other people didn't want to make the investment, they stepped up and did. I'm very, very proud of that. And so I think for those who are interested in franchising or not franchising, interested in a business, bring it. I think that's one way that you can help. One, one of the great things, we do have a strong community. When you look in our schools, and I've worked in Fulton County schools, we have strong partnership with our schools. And any Friday, look, I just saw you a couple Fridays ago. When you go to a game in our community, the whole community is there.
Yes.
Help invest in our kids. We have a football game coming up for the Westlake football boosters. Part of the relationships I established, they'll send flyers and say, hey, Councilwoman, will you put this in your flyer? We need the support of the business community to help our local schools. Put a team in the golf tournament. That helps. Volunteer at our schools. Every little bit helps. Participate in the cleanups we have. Every month, Cascade BMA has a cleanup. This one is this Saturday.
Okay.
We get done. We'll be there at 8. We'll be done by 10. It's the best feeling in the world when you drive down the street and it's clean. I'm just telling you. We can all have a role to play, even if you just do it once or a couple times a year. Everybody can serve. And so that's my message. Everybody can serve. Everybody can do something to improve our community. Special thanks. I see a couple people on here who I've worked with in the community who have had various issues that they wanted to address. I think people get lost in what happens in our meetings. That's only an iceberg of really what we do.
Right.
We're dealing with everything from, sewer issues to, people might have sinkholes. We're dealing with drainage issues on properties. The other day I had a concern about beavers damming up like the calls I get, you just really wouldn't even probably believe it. You get the calls about the dead animals, you get the legal dumping. I mean, we have a range of issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so I don't know who I was with recently. They said, does your phone ring like that all the time? I said,
All the
pretty
time.
much.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
it does. All the time.
Pretty much. I try to get back as fast as I can, but it's constant. That's what the service really looks like. It's not just the meetings. It's the day-to-day that you're addressing concerns that residents have. I get calls about, people's apartment, maybe being subpar. Can you intervene? Mold in apartment, range of issues. So then I'm trying to connect, our code enforcement staff. Can you go investigate this complaint I've received from a resident? So we deal with a number of quality of life issues that I don't even think people have a true appreciation for.
Well, I do. I think I can imagine, but I probably can't because I'm not with you 24/7. But I know that you're public servants first, and it's around the clock. And it's not just what we see on during a council meeting, like you said. There was one last question I want to give you, and then we'll wrap it up. It's and this is from Miss Juanita Marbury. Thank you, Miss Juanita, for putting your name on the screen so we can see who we're talking to with this pretty picture. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good evening. What is the timeline to open the Sandtown Gymnasium, and what are pending upgrades in the facility?
Sandtown, I hope we can open it in October. I was there earlier this week. They've done, for those who know, it's never had a renovation. We've done a lot. So not only did we put a new roof on the building, you now have air in the gym. It previously had no air in the gym. All the flooring has been replaced throughout and painted.
Mhm.
We made sure we put that purple in the building. I know the Sandtown Vikings love their purple. Um, it's purple and gray. It looks really good. The whole exterior of the building has been redone. If you can probably see that from the street, but we will have a grand opening. The last thing we did, maybe about a month or so ago, we did a change order to renovate the bathrooms in the facility. That's what they're working on, and they're finishing the gym floors. So we're really close. It looks great. We did have, frankly, some turnover in staff that kind of delayed it, but it is back on track, and they're finishing up the last details. I'm so ready to get our babies back in the rec center.
Yeah.
I've heard from community extensively, but I think they'll be pleased when we go back in. Um, and so we're looking forward to bringing the programming back in our after school program. And Mr. Turner knows I was on the phone talking to him today, like, how close are we? So that's key. And thank you for all those citizens who reach out and they're vocal and listen. They know how to do it in a way that we move the agenda on the items, but we are not tearing down our community in the process. So thank you for being the best part of our city and then engaging in a way that's appropriate and professional.
Absolutely. And so I've just shared some comments. You have a lot of comments here. Oh, there is one last question. I want to ask it real quick if you don't mind. And this one, I think you have a timeline on this, and you may have mentioned it, but is there a time frame for Freddy's to start building?
I don't know exactly. I don't know if they've closed yet with the
Okay.
current landowner because they have to close, but
Mhm.
um,
It's coming.
I would imagine maybe by the end of the year we could see some construction on it beginning.
Okay.
They usually don't take too long once they get going. The
Okay.
great thing about that site, it doesn't have to go through a rezoning. It was already commercial from 15 years ago. It was more about getting the new tenants and getting them to, purchase the out parcels and then begin construction. But I think I'll be able to announce a couple new additions to the area real soon that we're just trying to work it through and working through how we improve traffic flow, not just on Riverside, but on Union Road where the school is. That's been an issue for a very long time. Me and Councilwoman Gums have been staunch advocates on there. We're looking forward to hopefully begin seeing something on that this upcoming fiscal year.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, we're near the end. One last question. Do you know when the I-20 285 interchange construction will start? You mentioned that, I think,
No,
earlier.
I thought they should have maybe started by now, but I'm not totally sure. That's more of a GDOT question. I
I
can
was going
try
to
to
say,
get some information. And for those who live in District 1, I send you a weekly newsletter and have ever since I've been in office. You'll get a newsletter on Monday or Tuesday from me. And if you're not, you need to send me an email and you'll get on the list and stay in the know, as I like to tell everybody in District 1. But I will reach out to GDOT and see if I can get an update on what's going on with the I-20 exchange.
okay, because I get your newsletters. I get all council members' newsletters. And because there's something unique in every single district and or area that comes from each of your newsletters. So along with getting your newsletters, along with if you guys see any, things that need to be done, fixed, please use C-Click Fix. Before you call your council member, you will see that things will actually get done and you can track the progress of it. C-Click Fix. It is a great tool that our city has for us to report issues and for issues to be handled and dealt with. Um, we'll kind of stop right here and let you let the voters know how to get in contact with you. But more importantly, Dr. Rao, let them know why they should reelect you for this upcoming election. And if you have any final comments, you have the floor.
Thank you. To learn more about my campaign and to see the work I've already done, you can visit my website at www.reelectralford1.com. You'll see Raul in action, as I'd say. I actually have a track record. Some people can say what they're going to do or propose. You actually see it. You can go out your front door, you can go move around this community, and you see the actual work. I'm deeply committed to this community. I'm not going anywhere. I, I've raised my family here. My daughter has been literally through this community from pre-K to now she's a senior at Westlake. And so I'm committed to making sure not only my child, but the children in this community have what they need to thrive and be healthy, and that we as adults can make sure that our basic services we can get right here in our community, and we don't have to go anywhere outside of our community to get it. And so I continue to make sure that we have a well-maintained and beautiful community, because it is indeed beautiful. I've served with professionalism, dignity, and transparency since being in office. I'll continue to do that, and I'll continue to make you proud. And for that reason, I want your vote on November 7th. I'm going to encourage you to take advantage of early voting, which begins October 16th and runs through November 3rd. In our area, probably the closest location is the Southwest Arts Center. Hours are 9 to 6 p.m. and weekends from 12 to 6. So take advantage of early voting, and I'll see you at the polls.
Awesome. Well, this has been a wonderful, I would say, hour and so of questions and answers that you are providing to not only the citizens that are in your district, but also just throughout the city of South Fulton. I want to thank you for your dedication to the community, to the citizens, and also for joining us in Safer Communities and sharing information about what you have already done and what you're already doing and what you plan to do should you be reelected. And I have one last comment here that I will share with you. Your constituents are ranting and raving. I don't know if you can see these comments, by the way, so that's why I'm sharing
I can't, but I'll go back and watch them.
All right. Well, we'll end on this note. And as you stated, they can find you on www.reelectraul4d1.com. But also, do you have some social media outlets that they can follow you on?
I'm on everything.
You're on
Instagram, Facebook. I have a re-election Facebook page. I have a council one.
Okay.
So you can definitely reach me. And these aren't new. They've been there, for the whole time I've been in office. And so if you want to go back and see the service, you can go back years and see I've been serving this community. So check me out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me and have a wonderful evening. Night.
You too. Thank you.